Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to explore the quiet psychology behind a really common and, let's be honest, kind of painful experience when someone you care about just stops reaching out.
You've been there, right? We've all been there. A connection that felt really solid starts to go quiet. The texts get less and less frequent, the calls just stop, and you're kind of left there wondering, what did I do? What happened? It's a super confusing feeling, and it is so easy to take personally.
Now, just to be clear, we're not talking about ghosting here. You know, that sudden, unexplained vanishing act. Nope, this is different. This is about the people who are still kind of in your orbit, but they've just stopped being the one to initiate contact. The ball is always, and I mean always, in your court, and the silence on their end just gets louder and louder over time.
But what if the silence isn't actually about you? What if our immediate reaction to feel rejected is actually blinding us to what's really going on beneath the surface? Well, psychology offers this really powerful shift in perspective, one that looks away from external blame and zooms in on internal change. This right here, this reframes the entire situation. Our fear, our gut reaction tells us it's a personal verdict. They don't like me. Simple as that. But the psychological reality, it's rarely about you. It's not a rejection. It's actually a reflection of their own internal evolution. Their mind is changing.
So what is going on in their mind? This kind of behavior is rarely random. It's almost always the result of these quiet, subtle mental shifts. So let's uncover the 5 most common psychological drivers behind this relational silence. Okay, so let's break down each one of these, because really understanding them can completely change how you interpret it when someone goes quiet. You might not realize it, but our brains are constantly subconsciously keeping score. If one person is always the one reaching out, always the one initiating, the brain recognizes this imbalance. So their silence then becomes this sort of subconscious test. Will the other person step up and even the score? This is all about protective withdrawal. And think about it. It makes perfect sense. If your texts are consistently met with, one-word answers or super long delays, it creates this tiny little sting of rejection. 1 or 2 times, no big deal. But over time, the brain learns that pattern. It starts to anticipate that low-effort reply, and to protect you from that repeated disappointment, it just stops trying. Silence becomes a shield. And building on that, sometimes the silence isn't passive at all. It's actually an active experiment. It's a way of gathering data. By stopping their outreach, a person can see who really values the connection enough to pick up the slack. Now, this isn't about playing games or being manipulative. It's genuinely about seeking clarity. And this leads to a really powerful question for all of us, doesn't it? If we were to go quiet, who would notice? Who would check in? The answer to that question reveals so much about the true nature of our connections. The person pulling back is basically asking themselves that very same thing. Okay, this one points to a huge sign of personal growth, a real increase in self-worth. When someone's sense of value starts coming from within, they just don't need that constant external contact for validation anymore. They're not chasing reassurance from others because they're busy building it for themselves. Their social energy just becomes way more intentional. And finally, we have emotional detachment. And this one is so key. The silence that you're noticing now is often just the external symptom of an internal change that actually happened weeks, maybe even months ago. The person may have already stopped sharing their inner world, stopped expecting much from the connection, and on some level, they've emotionally moved on. The quiet is just the very last piece to fall into place. Okay, so we've dug into the why. But what does this all mean for you? How are we supposed to interpret this silence when we run into it in our own lives? Well, the big picture here is that this kind of silence is rarely a malicious act. It's almost always a symptom of growth. Their mind might be craving calmer, deeper connections. They might just be trying to restore their own emotional balance. They're simply evolving. And sometimes our branches just end up growing in different directions. So what's the single most important thing to remember when you find yourself on the receiving end of this silence? When someone stops reaching out, their silence isn't really a message to you. It's more of a conversation they are having with themselves. It's a reflection of their own changing needs, their boundaries, their whole internal world. So it's not really an ending, but maybe, just maybe, it's an opportunity to see them and the relationship from a totally new perspective. And we'll leave you with that final thought. Instead of asking, why don't they like me anymore? Maybe the more powerful question is, What does my reaction to their silence reveal about my own needs for validation and connection? Because at the end of the day, understanding the world always starts with understanding the mind. Thanks for joining us.